This week's Record of the Week, we are joined by alternative country artist Holy Ghost.
Hello.
Anthony, how you doing today?
I'm doing so good, Alex.
Good,
How about you?
man. Dude, I'm doing great.
Good.
I'm having a lot of fun.
Good, me too.
Yeah, full of laughs.
Yes.
So, I know that you have a couple singles out.
I do. Yeah, I've
Right.
got 2 out right now.
Okay,
Yep.
awesome. And you have a full album coming out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, at the end of this month.
Okay,
Yep.
what's the date?
October the 29th.
Okay.
The entire record will be out on all platforms, all major platforms, wherever good music is sold.
That's always the tag,
That's
right?
the tag, yeah.
Yeah.
Wherever fine music is sold.
Yeah. All major platforms. And what's the title?
The title is Volume 1.
Beautiful. Very
I
artsy.
put my creativity into other places.
Yeah.
with this record.
Nah, dude, it's artsy in its own way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the idea with that always is if you say number 1, there's an implication that there will be another one to follow it. So I'm hoping to imply my way into a second record.
Yeah,
That
I
would-
actually really like that. Yeah, like for real.
Hey, you make a promise, you gotta live up to it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Or else you disappoint everyone.
Well,
And we know I can't live with that. Being an utter disappointment.
way to sour it. It seems like, your first couple singles have been going pretty well.
It seems that way. People
Yeah.
seem to enjoy them,
Yeah,
which is
very artsy.
more than I can ask
Yeah,
for.
dude, and I love them.
Thank you.
So for new listeners,
Yeah.
all listeners alike, want to try to take the opportunity, promote the project as much as possible.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I got just a couple questions for you.
Please.
Hopefully to try and get into a little bit of the psyche of Anthony and figure out what this project is
Take
about.
more than this video for that.
Well, maybe just a little bit.
Paquito.
Un poco.
Yeah, okay. I knew I was gonna lose the Spanish thing immediately.
You
actually
brought it up with me,
speak-
brother.
I know. As soon as it left my mouth, I was
Yeah,
like, this is
you're
a
like,
mistake. Cannot hold my own. Not in that field.
All right, first question for you.
Yes.
Softball. Where are you from?
I played softball back east. No, I'm kidding. That was terrible. So originally from DC. That's kind of where all my family's from. Yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
Oh, really? Yeah. I was
Yeah.
born in Fairfax Hospital, 10 minutes outside of DC.
Okay.
Yeah.
Word.
So my dad, my uncle, my brothers, like all professional musicians, all played in the DC area. Then we moved to Texas, and I was right outside of Dallas, and then moved to Nashville because my dad was in my uncle's band, and he had a record contract, and was also the house band for the Wild Horse Saloon for like 7 years. So they moved here for that, and I kind of grew up literally at like in the backstage of the Wild Horse. Like
Yeah.
some of my youngest memories are like falling asleep on the couch backstage at the
Dude.
Wild Horse.
That is awesome.
It's so Nashville.
Yeah. That's perfect for this project. That's like
Yeah.
the quintessential backstory.
It is a backstory.
What's that genre that comes out of DC? It's like,
Punk.
um,
That's the best stuff that's come out of DC.
no, there was like a genre of music that was like the alternative of Motown. I'm trying to think of what it's called. Go-go.
Go-go.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
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 I mean, yeah.
Any of your folks play that?
I mean, well, dude, it's interesting though because my dad he played a lot of Joe Cocker. Like
Okay.
that was kind of his big one of his big influences was Joe Cocker, Paul Simon. Crazy story actually. My my dad got to play with Steely Dan one night.
Yo!
Totally out of the blue.
Yo!
Yeah,
That is wild.
Well, they were playing. So I'll just quickly tell the story.
Yeah.
They were playing for the deaf college that was out there,
Okay.
and a part of that was that you just played super loud because they kind of just picked up on the vibrations coming off of the amps and stuff.
Yeah.
So they would just play Steely Dan songs because they were kind of harder rock, but
Yeah.
totally groove music.
Huh.
So one night they were playing and they finished their set, and from the back of the room, people were just going crazy to the point where you could tell that it wasn't the deaf college students because it was very obvious that they knew the songs.
Right. Yeah.
And my dad was singing and he just goes, "Oh, thanks very much, guys. Who's back there?" And they go, we're Steely Dan. We wrote that song. So then after the show, they just jammed.
Yeah.
Like until 3 o'clock in the morning.
Dude, that is so cool.
Yeah. My dad was full of like old school rock and roll stories,
Yeah.
which is just awesome.
Small world, by the way. My dad is from DC.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I knew I liked your dad for some
Yeah.
reason.
And all these years, never
Yeah.
knew. Second question.
Yes.
What got you into music?
Other than birth, there's music is like the most emotional portion of my brain, I think. So for those of you who don't know, I came from the film world, and the reason I did that was really because I thought like whole lineage is just professional musicians. Like maybe my spot isn't to be a professional musician. Like I always knew that I had the ability to create music, but it never was like I have to do this.
Right.
Until it became that for me later.
Yeah.
But what got me into music, probably the musical education that I got growing up. I got to experience so much good music before I was like cognizant of how good the music was that I was listening to. Like the first record that my dad gave me when I was 15, I finally got a vinyl set up that I stole from a church that we were on a mission trip for.
You stole?
Well, they were gonna throw it away.
Oh, okay.
And we were
It's
clearing,
not really stealing.
Not really stealing.
It's like you stole from the church?
I didn't ask if I could take it, but I did. It was these 2 suitcases.
Yeah.
And it was like from the 70s. We were clearing out this rural high school in the middle of like East Tennessee as like the mission trip or whatever. And it was a turntable and 2 PA speakers that they used to teach lectures from that had been pre-recorded.
Yeah.
So they did that like way back in the 70s, but this had been sitting in storage. Motor still worked, the needle was fine still. So I took it home and all of a sudden I have a vinyl set up. My dad and my mom still had all of their records from when they were growing up, and the first one he hands me is Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. And I swear that was like a year's worth of listening.
Yeah.
One record.
Yeah.
And I listened to that, Asia by Steely Dan, and it was like the greatest hits of Simon and Garfunkel. And it was like those 3 records for like a year straight.
Yeah.
And just more stuff on top of that, and I learned how to play bass in that time period as well. So after that happened, my dad would be like, "Oh, you like Paul Simon? Come watch this concert. See if you can mimic that bass line."
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
kind of got into that whole like learning by ear thing.
Yeah.
And then I just started writing
Okay.
because I love playing bass, and that was always like what emotionally felt like my instrument. But the thing was, I knew that I couldn't write and teach other people how to play a song
Yeah.
if I'm only playing on bass.
Right.
So that transitioned into me learning guitar out of necessity for the songwriting vehicle in which
Yeah.
to make sense to the band I was in at the time.
Right.
But that's kind of how I became a musician.
Mm.
Before that, it was casual listening, but I would still say that's like refining taste, which is kind of, I feel like that's like the pre-production work, if
Yeah.
you will, for
Yeah.
like any musical endeavor. Is
Yeah.
like if you define your taste super well, you know what you like and you don't like, and then you just let those influences like marinate, and that's what becomes your unique artistic style and ability.
Yeah.
So
I'm hearing some of the film influences too in that.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
film is interesting because it's the only art that encapsulates all art form. It's visual, it's audio,
Right.
it's writing,
Yeah.
it's everything at once. So for me, I think I just romanticize everything so much that I don't see art as being this like separate unit all the time. I see it as like a story, and what is the necessity for the story? What's the right medium? What's the vehicle? And that kind of helps me determine what a project's going to be. This one was like very clear. It was like Holy Ghost was always supposed to be exactly what it is. But had it been, you know, a better story for like a short film, then that's probably the outlet it would have taken.
What are some of your favorite artists or inspirations?
There's so many. First inspirations of music that I kind of chose for myself probably be punk. Just like all kinds of like early punk, like 70s punk. Love the Misfits. Love.
Of course.
Oh, dude, Misfits are like my bread and butter.
Yeah.
But I think that's because it comes from that like sort of unironic old school rock sensibility.
Yeah.
Whereas it's all like 50s like 3-chord like songs, you
Yeah.
know. They're all 50 songs, just with more aggression.
Right.
Which I love because it's in that sort of like Elvis-y vein of songwriting, if that makes sense. Not that he was like 3-chord, you know, 50s, you know, love ballads or whatever, but he had that like gospel thing, but he also had the rock thing.
Right, for sure.
And that became punk. Paul Simon, huge inspiration. Simon and Garfunkel probably more so because I think the songwriting is a little bit more tangible there. I think Paul Simon is creative genius, but he's almost too into his own prose to an extent when it comes to his particular solo career.
Yeah.
As Simon and Garfunkel, it was like very still folk kind of everyman music.
Yeah.
Steely Dan, huge influence. Love Steely Dan. But then when you get to like, you know, some more country stuff, it's like Waylon Jennings, Orville Peck, John Prine, really anyone that's like 60s to 70s outlaw country.
Okay.
That's like
Yeah.
stuff I grew up really liking. Like I was big into Johnny Cash before I even knew who Johnny Cash was.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, Elvis in
How
the
could you
same
not
way.
be?
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. There's like a tangibility and like attitude. And it's funny actually. All of my favorite bands I think of being like a through line because while they're all in different genres, they all have like a thing that sort of unites them.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes from like Elvis to Paul Simon to Steely Dan to the Smiths and like Bauhaus and like Misfits is sort of like a lateral thing, and then it goes into like Bleachers and like some newer bands, and it's all in my mind connected Vampire Weekend to in this sense of it's all sort of like Southwest African guitars, like bright, chorusy, like really dancey, vibey guitars that sit on top of the mix. Really smooth but aggressive bass lines that all are sort of like the driving notion of the songs. And simple but super pockety drums. And then normally like a really lyrically minded singer.
Right.
But that's the through line of like all of those artists to me. And I feel like that's kind of what I take on with Holy Ghost is it's not just a country record, it's also a very introspective record because one of the things that I always make sure when I go to write is no stupid lyrics. It's like that is a note that I like write in so many margins. Like anytime I'm songwriting, no stupid lyrics. And if there is one, that whole verse will come out.
Okay.
Just because normally whatever is the dumbest part of the verse is what's holding it up.
Right.
For some reason, that's just kind of always how it is. Like the stupidity is the cornerstone.
Yeah.
So you remove that and the rest of it just falls apart. It's
Right.
like, okay, just take the whole thing out.
Oh, that's interesting.
But yeah, I think that's kind of the way to phrase it. Like, I want groove, and it can be genre specific, but it's always gonna have normally like bright chorusy guitars and then super integral bass development throughout the song, and a really present lyrical through line.
Yeah.
That's what I think about for that.
Very cool. You mentioned attitude too,
Yes.
and I feel like that's probably one of the reasons why we got so along in our like creative abilities.
Yeah.
is that's another through line of all those artists that you mentioned is
Attitude.
like I had my punk phase for a while.
Yeah.
But then I also like there's the whole argument of like what is punk, what is not punk, and like people get very pretentious about that.
Yeah.
But for me, it was always like there's like the punk genre.
Yeah.
But then there's so many artists that have that like punk mentality and that feel,
Right.
that rawness.
Yeah. And what's the difference really other than like if you're
Yeah.
playing through a Vox or not?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Like there's so many ways to like hide your music and hide your message and like layer it. But then there's like
Yeah.
raw artists that I mean, you can do that in any genre.
Totally, and I
Yeah.
think people do it a lot in pop, which is crazy because that's the genre everyone expects the least amount from.
Right. Yeah.
But I think it's also the most interesting genre because it's the most subversive in your ability to articulate something. You have to be creative in the way you put it out there if it's going to have any kind of depth. Because what they're expecting is bubblegum sugar pop.
Right.
And the moment that you're able to take it a level deeper, whether it's musically or lyrically, it elevates the entire thing and you stand out so much more than everyone else.
A little bit of a hardball for you.
Yeah.
Why should new listeners listen to your music?
I think you really have to... I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you dig it, you dig it, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really... I could come up with like a marketing way to say something there.
Yeah.
But no, really. I mean, listen to it because you're curious. I mean, if you think that anything I have to say or stand for holds any water, then you're probably gonna like the music. I mean, it's not like I'm out here trying to be like Bach. Like, it's not the most intricate thing you've ever heard, and it's not the best produced record of all time, but it's really authentic to me, and it is the record that I wanted to make.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
in my
fair enough.
opinion, it's already a home run, regardless of if it gets listens. I mean, I
love to hear that.
I just
Yeah.
want if
Yeah.
you want to listen to it, listen to it.
Yeah.
You'll probably like it.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of how I feel, I guess.
What is your writing process? Do you have any sort of habits? Are you like, every Monday, or are you a lyric first? Or
Not that.
Just-
Not every Monday.
When the inspiration hits you, let's hear that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
It's like, it's a combination of a few things, but I think the easiest way to distill it, and probably the most honest way to distill it, is I have a picture in my head. And the picture is what will develop into a medium and the message I'm trying to create.
Yeah.
And then a lot of it is improv inside of that sandbox.
Okay.
That's really how I think about it. So, like, for instance, writing this record, I was working in a warehouse and we were not allowed to listen to anything all day long. So,
Christ.
right. So, my synapses were just firing off constantly
Yeah.
with lyrics and melodies and creativity. And eventually that got honed into something. But the first thing that I had was this image that led to the first song on the record, which was of my great aunt. She was Greek Orthodox, and she had a rosary, and she would always be holding a rosary and a glass of wine every time I saw her. That was her personality. And she was really funny, but she was like this old Greek DC socialite kind of woman. Like, she'd go to all the Greek Orthodox functions. She knew the whole community. It was really like kind of a thing. But the image that I had wasn't necessarily her. It was this sort of caricature of like, well, there's a lot of little old ladies that sit out there and like are so willing to critique the world and so willing to have opinions on things, but they're so sheltered and so insulary in the fact that they're normally sitting watching either the news or like a late night thing, holding a glass of wine and in the rosary, and just kind of like being very complacently upset at the world. And out of that, the song Rosemary came into place. And Rosemary is the name that I gave to this sort of like fictional affectation of what my great aunt was.
Okay.
So that in and of itself, I think, explains my writing process, because it was an image and then lyrics came kind of as I romanticized and poeticized the image that I got initially, and then I sat down and sort of improv'd the music, and then fit the lyrics along with it. I also play every instrument on this album, so that's one of those things of like, a lot of my writing process, especially musically, is like, cool chord progression, does it work with the lyrics? Yes, check.
Right.
I motor through stuff. There's two things really integral to my writing process. First instinct is probably right, and make choices quickly.
Okay.
Those are the two biggest things for me when it comes to writing.
Yeah.
And it's only because if I overthink it and overcomplicate it, it like stops
Right.
completely.
Yeah.
Like I almost feel like I have to be in this like total muse oriented state, and that's the only way anything gets done. Like it has to be like directly muse to paper. Sometimes I walk away from a song same day that I've tracked everything, and I cannot remember what I did. Not because I wasn't paying attention,
Yeah.
not because I didn't track the same part 5 times that day, but because I'm not here, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like I'm too ahead of the tracking, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like mentally and emotionally.
Yeah.
The guitar playing is not the point. It's
that
me
image.
hearing it back
Yeah.
and that fitting that image.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Man, always so thoughtful. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot
I
of
can't
layers
help
to
that.
fill there. Hey, man, and there's nothing wrong with it.
That's why I can't take more time on my process.
Yeah.
Because I will be in quicksand.
Yeah, yeah. And there's something about that too that, like, you know, if you're writing so much, like, you can write a song forever. At some point, you
Oh,
you
1000%.
gotta finish it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
Well-
it's just gonna be unfinished.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to composition. Because, oh my god, I mean, if you wanted to, you could make every chord a transitional chord. You could write in a complete circle for
Right.
the chord progression.
Yeah.
And that's amazing, and that's great. But sometimes you want to just be able to go play an acoustic set and not be like, how did I get there? What was this weird finger spaghetti that I did to make that
Yeah.
one tonality work?
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that stifles me from a performance aspect.
Mm.
So sometimes you also have to kind of go, okay, can I really do this live? Or am
Right.
I just sort of like, you know, boosting my own ego
Right.
with this
Yeah.
chord progression or this lead line that is going to do something? I mean, at a certain point, you have to realize you're really not making music for musicians.
Mm.
Majority. Like, unless you're, you know, a symphony, or
Right.
unless you are like a Steely Dan or someone like that. Generally, your listening populace isn't going to be guys that want to analyze your record like a Dream Theater record or
Yeah.
something like that. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just, that's not popular music,
Right.
as it were.
Yeah.
So I think that also helps with the like quick decision making,
Mm.
because it's like, well, that chord works. Maybe I might want to add a little extra flavor. Is it natural for me to do that? Am I going to remember to do that live? Then I should probably put it in.
Right.
And that's, yeah,
Speaking of live music,
yes.
what's your favorite show you've ever had?
Favorite show I've ever had.
Yeah.
There's nothing to do with Holy Ghost.
Okay.
This was a long time ago, actually. Going back to my dad and Joe Cocker, I played Carpe Cafe one time, and I had what I define as like one of those few little like magic moments live. I've had it a couple of times. This was the one that kind of gave me my confidence as a musician and as a singer, though. So I played Little Help with My Friends, like the Joe Cocker version, not
Yeah.
the Beatles version.
Okay.
And I decided that I was gonna just like, didn't rehearse this, but in my head as I'm playing it, I go, all right, we've done this chorus a couple of times
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna really reach for something.
Okay.
And I just decided to like go for a scream that wasn't exactly in the song, but I just like worked my vocal up to it.
Yeah.
And my voice broke exactly at the right time.
Yeah.
And I hit the exact note that was in my head. And I came back down and kept playing, and I was shaking because I did the thing. And I went, okay,
Yeah.
if I get one of those in my life, I'm good. So it didn't really matter. There's probably like 5 people in the room. But for me, that was like
Who cares?
the best feeling in
happened.
the world. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like always in those moments too. It's like you want to appreciate it as much as possible.
Yes.
But if you appreciate it too long, then it's like,
Yeah.
well, now you screwed up the rest of your set.
No, you gotta appreciate
Yeah.
it in the car on the way home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't be in that moment too long and just be like, dude, I really did that. 'Cause it's
Right.
like, what's the verse?
Yeah. Where am I now?
Yeah.
I've totally gone off the page. Yeah. Well, and especially with a set like that, because back then they would like hire you for like 2 hours or something like that. It was like an hour, 2 hours if you didn't have another person to fill the ticket.
Right.
So for me, it was like, okay, now I have to still play like 30 other covers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna like try and maintain my excitement. But that was a great time.
Dude, that's awesome.
People seem to like it.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay. And final question for you.
Oh.
Plugs. What are you
Plugs. Yeah, so the record comes out at the end of this month.
Okay.
On the Holy Ghost YouTube channel, there are 2 music videos up and sort of like an announcement introduction to the idea of Holy Ghost. So those are up, but soon we will be doing basically a bunch of live sessions on there. Mostly just because this music, I think, sort of deserves more of a full band.
Yeah.
And I can't give it that right now,
Okay.
just because I don't have a full band. So what I'm trying to do effectively is do like a stripped back version.
Okay.
So the whole idea would be like to basically do a live solo acoustic version of the whole record after it comes out.
Awesome.
So that'll all be up
Awesome.
within a few months.
That's super exciting.
Yeah.
Well, sweet, man.
Yeah, and that should turn into just like a live record version of it after that.
Okay.
Which I think will be neat, just because they were all written acoustically, and
Yeah.
I think they all have a certain flavor as an acoustic rendition. So,
Yeah.
I'm always a big fan of when people do that, like a full band and then a totally acoustic version.
Strip it down. Let's hear it raw.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I think that's when you see the real craft come out in a lot of ways.
Right.
So that's the next big thing. But Holy Ghost YouTube channel, definitely check that out because that's where that and the Instagram, which is Holy Ghost Music Official.
Awesome.
That's going to be the main source of like updates
Sweet.
and new videos coming out.
Sweet. And
Yeah.
we'll get that all on the screen for you.
Perfect.
One more time. What's
Yeah.
the date?
October the 29th for
Okay.
Volume 1.
October 29th, Volume 1.
Yeah.
Sweet. So, Anthony or Holy Ghost,
Yes.
man, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, dude, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank
This
you.
is awesome.
Thank you for joining and listening to me.
Dude, anytime you want, bud.
Oh, thank you.